Hey, good morning. And it's good morning. I'm from Melbourne, Australia. My name's Rod Hutchings, and I'll be moderating the panel today. And I'm coming from Melbourne, Australia, where it's a nice 3 a.m. in the morning. And today's panel is about influencing through collaboration. And really, that's such a vital skill, isn't it, to be able to collaborate, to work in this interconnected, rapidly changing world, is that there's just so much achieved through influencing, collaborating with people in your team, in the broader business. So I'm really looking forward to talking about the topic today and learning from our speakers. So if we could get the speakers to come and join us. Hey. And good morning, everybody. And I'm, like I said, really looking forward to our conversation today. So maybe to get started, if we just go around our virtual room and just talk, just a quick introduction of yourself, what brings you, interests you in the topic, and why I think it's really important to HR professionals. I want to give that a very quick go. So starting with you, Richard. Morning, Richard.
Yeah, good morning, Rod. So Richard Bertner, I'm the Senior Director of Compensation for Edward Jones. And obviously within kind of the reward space and HR space, this is a very important topic, as any of the kind of agenda items or priorities that we have really are dependent upon strong relationships with our business leaders. We need them to buy in. We need their support. We need their endorsements at the end of the day. So this is critically important, I think, again, for any function, but more particularly when we're thinking about the HR function and in my space, rewards.
Thanks, Richard. And going around the room virtually, next, is it Halai?
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Halai Shukran. I am the VP of Talent and Culture with Pluribus Digital. It's a government contracting firm here in Washington, D.C. Echoing Richard's sentiments about why this is so important, I think this is really the time to really kind of put a stamp on HR leaders really having a seat at the table. I think the pandemic naturally did that, and giving HR professionals an opportunity to strategically be a part of the decisions that had to take place during that time for employers. And I think now it's time to solidify and firm up that role and having a seat at the table and ensuring that it's not just a pandemic-driven decision, but that HR leaders belong at the business strategy roundtable, and building effective relationships and collaborations are definitely key in that.
Thank you. Good morning, Summer.
Hello, Summer Baruth. I work with AECOM. I'm the head of Global Employer Brand and Talent Attraction. I would echo what everyone's saying here. I think, especially in a role like ours where it's so much it's people first, it's people driven, and we really need to help the business understand that. Whether it's in the C-suite all the way through to the other centers of excellence, it's really important to partner all the way throughout the journey of both our candidates as well as our employees. And so this is one of my favorite topics because I feel like I spend a lot of time in collaboration and trying to influence people and win others over. So it's a good topic.
Thanks, Summer. And Vanessa.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Vanessa Ribro, founder of VNCO Coaching and Consulting, and I'm also the former Chief People Officer at BenchSci. What a topic. I think I will echo everything that Richard, Halai, and Summer said, and what you said, Rod, as well, about influencing being the backbone of everything we do in HR and in life. Like as a coach, like when you want to make things happen for yourself or anybody, actually influencing through collaboration is key. So I'm really looking forward to dive into that topic, because it's not always easy when you are in the trenches, when you are in the day-to-day, to be able to influence. Like, we're all human beings. So I think I want to touch on that during that topic. Like, yes, it's beautiful, but how actually you can do it.
Thanks, Vanessa. And and I guess one of the real things with HR is, it's really not command and control, is it? Like a lot of the people that we work within HR. It really is about influence and working together, and particularly trying to drive the results for the business itself. So let's maybe just start our first sort of meaty question. Just can you share, and this is asked for everybody, can you just share a pivotal experience where collaboration between yourself and the business leaders really impacted the organization outcomes and performance? So it's a bit of a meaty one. What's a memorable story, I guess, is really what I'm trying to get to. And anyone can have a go. So
I'm happy to
Yep.
jump in.
Go,
I
Vanessa.
remember I was part of a company that just got acquired, and like some changes were happening, rolling out like a new HR system to manage performance. And as any big changes like that, like it's really disruptive for the business, and it was really difficult for my business unit to absorb that. So it was kind of like sitting down with business leaders in Montreal and discussing, hey, there is something we don't control, like a decision has been made at the headquarters. We can't control that. So what can we focus on that we have control over? And it was really a conversation about partnering and collaborating to make that happen on, okay, this is happening, how we can best make this happen and be the least disruptive, and actually being able to change the perspective of this is happening, but what can be great about that? What can we take on ourselves and decide for ourselves that will make a difference for the business? So it was really a way of, this is what it is, how can we partner to make that better?
Maybe I'll just sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add a little follow-up question to that. Can you just, what was a key lesson you learned from that experience? That's really sounds quite a big corporate enterprise type thing. What was a lesson you learned from that one, Vanessa?
Yeah, I think it was kind of authenticity, kind of like being yourself. Like I was faced with that decision that I could not change, and I could just say like, hey, that's beautiful, this is that's what we are doing, and like being really optimistic and like not being completely authentic, or actually not listening to what will be the consequences for the business. So the decision I made is that being myself and acknowledging like every decision are not always don't always have a great impact. Like sometimes like you have to deal with the consequences of some decision, but like how can you shift things and like but stay yourself, really staying yourself, and like taking that advantage to build trust and relationship. Great.
Thanks, Vanessa. And was it Summer trying to speak before?
Oh, yeah. So I think, in a lot of companies that I've worked with in the past, I've tried to build this employer brand talent attraction space that hasn't always existed in organizations, right? And so then it always lends itself then to people and culture, DE&I. And so we're kind of working across all centers of excellence. And so I think there's been numerous times where, yes, we know we need it, but we don't know that we need it right now. How much is it going to cost us? And so having to work very grassroots on very lean teams will necessitate having to collaborate with the teams that do have the resources and do have the people. And so I think, whether at AECOM, Centene, if you go back down through, to Compass Group and on, going backwards, I think that's always been where I've honed these skills around how to negotiate, how to collaborate, how to best partner, and then how to tell the story to leadership. And a lot of times that's where you get the buy-in, right? If you're like, we're already collaborating at this level, so now we need your buy-in up here to help support it, to help create those business cases. And I think the key part being, we're people and it's people first. Yes. So we have to lean into that.
Thanks. Thanks, Vanessa. Sorry, Summer.
That's okay.
Anyone else want to add to this one?
Yeah, I can definitely chime in here if that's okay. So I think my experience that was pivotal for me, I think brings Summer and Vanessa's experiences somewhat kind of together. Vanessa, you talked about a time where there was an acquisition that took place. Unfortunately, on the other side of that, that's where redundancies or layoffs also come in. And that's where my pivotal experience came in. It was actually probably more of a junior time in my leadership career in HR. But I was really able to build an effective relationship with our C-suite at that time, because naturally what was happening, we were going through we went through a huge acquisition, and that led to one of the biggest layoffs we've had. But it was at a time when, and we've all seen it in HR, where it's always hard to cut the leadership team for small companies that have been acquired. And we were ready to do that. But the flip side of that was essentially retaining some of the senior individual contributors, and for lack of a better word, the soldiers that we wanted to keep, right? Summer, the reason why I thought about you and what you had mentioned as well is that there's always a pushback of, yeah, I know we need it, but we don't need it right now. It naturally became the time to really make it important that you need to focus on this. And what we had the opportunity to do as HR professionals is, we are the people leaders. We're in the trenches as HR business partners, and anecdotally and from a standpoint of quantitative data, we have the facts to really talk about who are your top 2%, who are your high performers, what are the communications that we need to have with the people that you want to retain when you are getting rid of that leadership tier, which could be the reason why the majority of that staff is there. So it kind of naturally put HR in the forefront. It created a natural opportunity to build relationships and showcase how we can lead with data, and talk about why there's a business case to do X, Y, or Z. And I think it really showed me a lot about how you can lead those conversations and build those effective relationships.
Thank you. That's great. Richard, you got anything?
Yeah, I would just add, kind of echoing what everybody's already said here, is if you think about the pandemic, that was really, hopefully, is once in our lifetime sort of event. But I think it was really transformational in terms of our thought processes and sort of the opportunities and solutions it presented to not only HR, but also to the business leaders as well. And as everybody's kind of mentioned, I think taking a people first approach was where I really was very pleased to see how leaders were thinking first, about going virtual and then coming back into kind of a more controlled office, sort of hybrid environment. But again, that time in our life is really kind of shaped and defined a lot of what we're doing today. And what was good 3 years ago may not be good today, may not be good in the next 6 months. So I think it really kind of piqued our minds to go a little bit deeper in thinking about how do we really approach these situations and how do we engage with each other to, again, make it a people first, but also making sure that we're driving kind of the strategy down the road as well.
Thanks, Richard. Now I'm just going to pick up something I think Vanessa said that I thought is quite key, is that how can HR leaders be authentic, so maintain their authenticity while adapting to diverse needs and styles of different business leaders? So being authentic, what do you think about that?
I think that one can be a challenge, right? Because we know that we need to be, because we're out telling our own employees, bring your authentic self to work. You can be your best here. But then we have to read a room and we have to gauge different styles of leadership. And we may have to shift who we are a bit from time to time. And so it can be a challenge as leaders to keep your identity and your authenticity while also trying to win people to your side. And I use the term win a lot. And I just feel like that tends to be the case when you're trying to get leadership buy-in, right? You're really trying to bring them on the journey with you. So I find often I do have to shift a bit, but I try to still be who I am with like crazy clothes, hair, personality, and meet them where they are comfortable. So try to get an understanding of what the fear is, so that I can be like, yeah, that used to scare me too, right? So trying to find different ways that I can show up as myself, but still make the room comfortable. And that can be a challenge. It's exhausting, by the way, but but important.
Yes. Thanks, Summer. Who else?
Can I add something, Rod, to build on
Yeah,
some
of
of
course.
your quick? Yeah, I love what you said. It's kind of like being flexible in approach, but not in principle. Like you have your principle, you know your principle, you know who you are. But like when you read the room, it's kind of like you adapt and you meet people. You have to meet people where they are, but you keep your north, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Thanks. Anything else on this one?
Yeah, I would just, again, what Summer mentioned is, the authenticity as well. I think one of the things that I've seen that's worked well for me, and again, it one size does not fit all, is, management of not only employees, but management of the relationships is again, it's not a one size fits all. You have to really, as Summer mentioned, kind of read the room, understand, what their kind of their hot buttons are, or where their concerns are, et cetera. Again, I take more of a little bit more of a direct approach, saying, again, just being very clear and transparent where I kind of see the opportunities. But again, you have to listen in order to understand. So I think, again, just making sure that not a one size fits all approach works for every leader, or within HR, or within your team or relationships as well.
No, it's very true. Anything else? We done?
I was just going to touch on the principal aspect that Vanessa mentioned, and the North Star is, I was very uncomfortable with understanding that to get buy-in, it's essentially a sales tactic. And I was like, wait, I'm a salesperson at the end of the day. But in essence, it is that, right? I think I put together a sales conference once, and we built this training around a book called The Challenger Sale that's written by some leaders from CEB. And it taught me a lot about my own position in HR and how to come back to a place of authenticity, is that you're literally trying to challenge people's thinking and see it from a different perspective. That is what the Challenger Sale is all about. And so in doing that, you may kind of shift a little bit about who you are in the day-to-day, and you're not potentially leading with your perspective, or you're not leading with an HR perspective that may be at the core of what you're trying to do, but ultimately you're trying to have someone see it from your perspective. And at the end of the day, that's not your personal perspective. That's the perspective of the business that's going to impact the bottom line. And that's going to be more fruitful for everyone involved. And so that principle, that North Star, it's just making sure you're figuring out a very creative way to get back to that. And to Richard's point, being direct, once you get those relationships down, and once people start to see the business value add that comes from building those relationships, I feel like that's the most beautiful part, is then you can actually be direct. And you don't have to feel at any point potentially inauthentic with what you're doing.
Thank you. And maybe extending on that in a bit of a way, I'm just curious. So you say about once you get the intention, and this is again for everybody, is how do you first go about ensuring you can capture the attention of the business leaders so that they actually want to listen to you as the HR leader? So how do you get it going? How do you get it started, do you think?
So, I think, again, what everybody's mentioned here is you really need to understand your audience and understand where their issues or challenges are coming from. I've seen just conversations be derailed constantly by going in and talking about a topic or an issue that's not even relevant to the business leader whatsoever. That's not what they're focused on at that point in time. It could be a cultural issue, a timing issue, a financial issue, whatever it may be. So really having a good understanding, and that's, I think, even kind of baked into kind of prepping, right, before you meet with those leaders. Meet maybe with, the HR business partner from my side, or meet with some of their individuals on their team to kind of really understand what are the challenges or issues that they're facing, so that when you do have that conversation, you're bringing a relevant fact base, but also, again, something that's meaningful in terms of nuggets of information for them as well.
That's really good. And I think in like summing it up, I think what he's saying is really listening to the business.
That's
actually.
Yeah.
And I think if you take it back to that sales piece, right? I remember being in college and somebody going, oh, your psych and comms degrees will really make you a good salesperson. And I was like, I don't want to be a salesperson.
Yeah, no.
But the key skills that you need to be good at sales is exactly the same type of skills that, are interchangeable here, and how you're, really listening for those pain points, really understanding your subject matter, so that then you can identify where the gaps might be in the communication styles, and how to, and where their challenges might be. And so it really is an interesting take on it when you think of it that way. And I think that if you're in the HR world, you've not thought about your role in that way, if you do that mindset shift a bit, that could be really helpful in how you go about accomplishing this.
And to build up on that listening skills, like asking question, and it's something that I kind of used a bit further once I did my coaching certification, and really that mindset of like coach, like, and asking question about understanding where they are, and like maybe what's the bigger problem behind the problem, what are they really struggling. And like, I think when you listen and you ask the question, you start to position yourself much more as a partner, and you are not on the other side of the table, you are next to them, and it's different, like you are looking in the same direction instead of like opposite way. So if you can make your way through the table and like really sitting next to the business, is where like I think magic happen, because you are aligned on something that's like the same objective basically.
Yeah, so I do love that. I think was listening, asking questions, and it really shows authentic interest, doesn't it? I think and that will really, again, bring that people bit into it. Any more on that? I'll need that one.
Yeah, I was going to just touch on the asking questions part. I think oftentimes as HR leaders, we think about what happens when we propose new ideas to business leaders and we're met with a no. But oftentimes with my teams, I always encourage them to ask them the question about, what if we didn't do X? So it's not just the idea that was met with a no, but like, what happens to the business? What happens to our staff? What happens to our KPIs if we didn't do this initiative, if we didn't move forward with these terminations or whatever it may be? And that challenges that thinking a little bit. So asking those types of questions too about what happens on the flip side, and that often doesn't create a need at that specific time, but it does encourage a different way of thinking about what we need to be cognizant of, or what business leaders need to be cognizant of in partnership with HR in 6 months, in a year, or as it relates to the 5-year plan of certain goals that the business has.
Now that's a really good addition. And you must have been reading my mind, because my next question, I think, was pretty related to that. So, which was really, what are some of the common challenges we face when trying to influence business leaders, and how do we overcome that? So I think you sort of were having a go at that one already. So who wants to go at that one?
I'll throw my hat in here. Again, as my peers have mentioned, it's you have to make the conversation relevant to the individuals, to the leaders, et cetera. Asking the question, as it was mentioned, what if we don't do this? What if? But the question is, what if we do, and then we have regrets? Is there an opportunity for us to think about this a little bit differently? Do we do kind of tests? Do we, think about it? The key that I've seen that has been, again, good for me is many different options in terms of the conversation. I think leaders, when they come into a conversation, if we're only presenting one option, one view, one set of questions, it paints them into a corner, right? And for them, they like to hear the options in terms of what's available and what considerations, but also making sure, as again, everybody has mentioned, we've done our homework. What are the risks? What are the opportunities from each one of these decisions? And really, at the end of the day, it becomes a business decision, right? So again, if we move with this, option, it may not be the best option, but it's the best option of the three at the end of the day, and it gets us 80% of the way there. So again, that's just kind of resounding what everybody has mentioned already. Is again, that's just kind of, again, my personal perspective.
No, I love that. I think you've got it pretty well. Preparation, homework, options, they're definitely all very important things to bring to the table.
To build on, can I add something, Rod? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course you can. Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to build on the strategic aspect. I think still HR suffers sometimes of not having the credibility or having to build that credibility. And I feel like, especially the past couple of years, having that strategic mindset of like providing data behind an ideas or showcase past success or co-creating a roadmap with the business, like all of those things help you build that credibility. And actually, if you want to be treated as strategic as an HR person, it's almost like acting like any other business unit. If you take a sales team or a product team, like if they want to push forward a features or a product or anything, they need to do some market research. So you need to do your own work, and like they co-create a roadmap with the sales team. So I think like more than ever, HR team needs to embrace that kind of like strategic mindset and provide and build that credibility by providing the right data, by co-creating with the business, being as much possible embedded in the business and speaking the same, it's actually speaking the same language. Mm-hmm. So when you are next on the same side on the table, like you then need to speak the same language and like get rid of some HR language sometimes we have and speak languages that speak to them, basically.
Thanks. Anything else? Okay, I might just move on. I'm just curious, like looking at some of the comments. I think I'm curious about if you can differentiate when you need to be dealing with the senior executive, like board level, C-suite, versus the middle management when we're trying to influence. What some differences do you think between working with both those different stakeholder groups within the business? So two very important groups. What's some differences?
I'll take that one first. So for me, middle level tends to be more what's the outcome for your employees going to be, and how are you best going to be able to communicate this? How are you going to be able to mitigate anything that might come up? And really, that's where those skills of eliminating some of your HR speak come in handy, because I think it's really important to, again, meet someone where they are. But it's a different perspective, right? Because I know HR is always accused all the time of you push out all these things that we could never implement on the ground, and you don't even think about what that looks like for us in day to day, because it effectively could make a manager basically an administrator. So you have to really think through those things. And so I think it's a very different tactic where you're kind of in it with them and walking through, versus with the C-suite, it's really like, here's the problem and here's the solution. Here's the impact to you and here's the impact to the organization. And sometimes you only get 3 minutes. I literally had, when I used to sit on the C-suite floor, it would be like, I know I had a 30-minute schedule with you, but I don't have time. If you can walk with me to the elevator, that's all the time you get.
Right.
You learn really quick to take your 30-minute presentation, no visuals, and quick and pithy, right? So I think it's a very different, it can be very different style, but I think you're getting to the same message. You're just really much more high level at the senior level. Yeah.
No, that's really good. Thanks, Summer.
Let's say just to add to what Summer has mentioned is, and I don't know if my peers or others on the call have experienced this as well, but sometimes there is a disconnect between the senior leadership and the individuals that are reporting to them, right? So when we are having those interactions, we may be having an interaction with the middle management saying, okay, this is what, kind of senior leadership said. And they go, no, that's not going to work, right? We're not going to do that. And so I think, again, to what Summer had mentioned, it's really understanding how to make those conversations relevant to those individuals, especially if you're not getting the support and kind of the downward messaging from the executives in the C-suite. And that oftentimes happens, right? Is, in theory, they're good with it, but maybe they're not good at reinforcing that to their teams about this is an initiative that we're passionate about. And so that's where it's kind of, the old adage is pushing water up a hill, right? When we start to interact with that middle level of management. So it is really important to understand, what's relevant to them, but also, again, bringing in kind of the perspective of how does this fit in not just your world, but across the firm as well.
I think another part of that is also when you're in lockstep with middle management, I think the flip of that can happen where information or positive outcomes can cascade upward, as long as you're kind of sitting side by side, to Summer's point, with middle management and working through those solutions with them. Oftentimes, to the point that everyone else was saying, is that those executives only see bottom line impact, or that bottom line impact is not shown quick enough for the C-suite. And so some of those encouraging data points from middle management and their partnership and collaboration with HR leaders can come upwards to say, this is actually working out well for our department, for our teams, for X, Y, or Z reasons, giving us a little bit more of an opportunity to encourage the C-suite to give initiatives and programs a little bit more time to have more of a profound impact on the organization.
Thank you. All right. Now, just moving on, a bit of a different topic would be when we're in the world of technology, there's all different technology stuff. So in what role does technology now really play a key role in enhancing collaboration with the business, between HR and the business? And we've heard about data. I think someone mentioned that before, but what are the different ways technology is really key today to helping?
Rod, I would say technology is evolving, not just week to week. It's day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. And especially from an AI perspective, the opportunities that I see, again, from a reward space, is how can we improve the end user experience, which is, again, it's a tie-in from the executive's perspective as well, because the end user are the individuals that are under those executives at the end of the day. So what are we doing to really enhance the experience? And honestly, at a cost neutral or a cost savings sort of benefit. So it's improved user experience, but it's also, again, from a financial perspective. And secondly, or thirdly, however you want to define it, is how does it tie into the cultural kind of norms or standards that executive has as well? Are we introducing something that makes absolutely no sense, even though it could give an enhanced user experience? So I think you have to kind of check all the boxes in terms of what we're trying to put forward, and understanding that, again, technology, again, is evolving so quickly. Is, again, what's good today may not be good tomorrow.
I love what you said, Richard. Oh, sorry, Rod. You didn't mean.
No, I was going to say very true.
Yeah. No, I agree with what you said, Richard. And I think it's all about the ROI. And because it's changing so much, is that, okay, what you are implementing, leveraging, using today, like, is it going to save people's time? Like, time is of essence. It's money. It's everything. It's precious. So how can you implement something that will save people's time, but like always figure out, like, okay, what's the downside? Like, measure the downside. And it's actually, like, the way I'm seeing technology is how it can remove friction and speed up things to spend more time on things where you add value. You want them to spend the least amount of time on things that doesn't. And you want the tool to help you speed up things for you to spend time, like, as human, like leveraging the human aspect. So yeah, I just wanted to add that to what Richard mentioned.
Thanks, Vanessa. Anyone else want to have a go on that one? Or maybe I'll add extra dimension to it. I think with technology, I think we've got so much access to more data. So how do we, in this sort of era, does having that data from a HR point of view, do you see how that can strengthen connections and strengthen making sure the right decisions are made from a HR point of view within the business? So what are your ideas of, using the data from technology and helping drive collaboration, better decision making across the organization? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it allows us to get to it faster, right? Because in the past, again, when you're collaborating with many teams, data sets look very different. And so if you're able to kind of dashboard that quickly through an AI tool or through something that works best for your team, that helps us get to the data faster, which helps us get in front of senior leadership with information and recommendations grounded in data, which they love. And the metrics behind things to be able to show like this is really moving the needle versus anecdotally we think it might, which can be often a term we normally will say like, well, we think it's going to, right, when it comes to people, because again, people and technology changes daily, hourly, minute by minute, right? So, but it is nice when we're able to then say like, here's some data though that can back up the direction that we're going and why.
Yeah.
I think it's also making sure that you're regularly meeting with business unit leaders to see how those dashboards and data can be customized for their group. I know, a lot of systems obviously allow for scheduled reporting and that sort of thing. And I think oftentimes you don't know what people will pay attention to or what will grab their eye unless you're constantly putting it in their face. So making sure those scheduled reports go out and actually potentially having a monthly or a quarterly meeting to review that data. If they haven't been paying attention to it, why or why not, right? Like what additional data points do they need to help drive business outcomes? What else can we be doing to support them from an HR standpoint? And then using our technology to figure out how we can translate some of those opportunities into data and metrics. So it's not only thinking about what are those reports and the data that you can provide, but the customization aspect and always just being iterative on the data that you provide.
Agree.
Yeah. Thank you.
I would just kind of echo one of the things that we've talked about is there is so much data out there, right? And the question is, what is the relevant data, right? Executives don't want to be overburdened with spreadsheets and dashboards and PowerPoint presentations that are 50 pages long. They just don't have the time, and it's not relevant for them at the end of the day. So I think there's a lot of kind of anticipation or preparation that goes into kind of really understanding or kind of anticipating what are the pieces of data, right, that we can do. And I think somebody had told me once, data will scream loud enough if you beat it long enough, right? And so if you continue to kind of go with the data, you can make it say whatever you want to, right? But again, it's what is relevant in terms of all the reams and databases that we have access to. And it's also kind of making the connections within the firm as well as, are these data points even relevant or are they kind of ancillary, right? They just don't mean anything at the end of the day. So again, totally echo what everybody is saying here. But again, like I said, data will say what you want it to say if you put it in a specific format.
To add on to Richard as well, like about the relevance of the data, that, okay, if you collect all that data, like what decision will you be able to make with that, or which decision do you want to make? Like collecting the data that helps you go further or make better decision are the relevant data. And I just want to share a quick experience I have with that specifically. At Benchside, we really try to move up to just individual performance, but look at team performance and the dynamic, especially like in a hybrid remote world. Like individual are super important, but you want to look at the dynamic of the team. And we were able to collect data at the individual and the team level to understand where they were in their journey, like where they lacking like clarity, where they lacking psychological safety. And it's where like I'm connecting that back to what we are discussing today, that a lot of what we do in HR are related to people, and like understanding where the team are can really help you influence where you need to go. Like if they need more clarity, it's where you can, okay, like I think this initiative will really help you. So those data can help you build your case and really influence some decision.
Thanks. Now I'm just wondering, I'm not sure if the differences between technology, data, where you're where you're in a HR organization, which is you're a department, you're a big department and you're a big organization, versus being a HR department of one? What's the difference of, like, what are the key things from a technology and a data point of view from being where you are, just like there's just one of you, you are the HR department in a smaller organization? What's some differences there, do you think? What's really important to prioritize?
I've been in both seats. Throughout my journey, right, whether it's at startups or larger organizations, I think it's two different conversations that are taking place, right? When you are part of a large HR organization where the resources and the budgets are there for a multitude of HR systems that you can leverage, it goes back to everything that all the panelists on this call have mentioned. It's about really leveraging that data to tell a story, right? And how you do that. But I think on the flip side, it is important to focus in on those smaller teams or those HR organizations of one, because the perspective that I think goes into play there is really focusing in on, how do I advocate for why technology and data is definitely needed at this organization, and how can that help the organization scale up? And I think that's essentially, when you think, and I'm thinking about startup world, that's essentially what startups are thinking about: scalability, growth, operational efficiency, and that sort of thing. And so, and probably less so about retention, because they're just focusing on business growth so much that retention and people and metrics relative to that fall by the wayside. So I think what really I would encourage all HR leaders that are in that organization of one to do is really beef up on influencing without authority, and beef up on executive presence, and beef up on some of those skills that'll help you start to build the case for why technology and data is so important, and why a resource like an HRIS or a performance management tool are definitely going to be impactful for the business long term, versus just saying we need to retain these people for X number of reasons. Let's focus in on the data that'll drive business outcomes that'll come through some tech systems.
Thank you. Anyone else want to? No? Okay, let's have now maybe looking at the future of HR collaboration. So looking forward, how do you see the role of HR evolving in its collaboration with business leaders? So, and maybe how do we see HR being beyond just people strategy, but helping really be part of setting the overall business strategy and part of that conversation? That sort of
I think it's really important, especially as the world is moving so quickly. We talked about early on, HR having a seat at the table. And so just making sure that you have built those relationships so that you can be part of the conversation as the business growth model is being created, and as they're thinking about what their strategy is for each year, versus what's happening and what happens with some companies. Some companies have this down, but in some companies, the business strategy is set and then it's handed off to HR and said, this is how many people we need to hire. This is how many people we need to retain. This is how many programs that we think we need to put into place. Where I think if we're having those conversations from the very beginning, then we can work through it together. And it's also a time that you don't need yes people sitting at that table. You need people who are going to say, yes, I get that we need to grow the business by this much, or I know that we need to do this. However, the talent market isn't looking so great right now in these roles. And so we need to set some realistic expectations, right? So we don't want to go back to investor groups or to boards and say, this is what's going to happen, when we can take a look all around to the talent market and see very clearly. And that's something that our business leaders aren't thinking about when they're building these strategies necessarily, or they have a thought of it, but they don't really know the work that goes into behind it. And so I think it's important to continue those conversations and building those relationships.
Thanks, Emma. Anyone else?
No. I can add to that if no one, I go off of who's off mute or not, but I can add to that. I was going to say that a few years ago, probably over a decade now, when you started to see the HR leadership role, or HR as a function, transition away from just people operations and compliance to being very talent management focused, right? Where talent did have a seat at the table. And that happened with like the culture deck that came from Netflix and Patty McCord being in seat as the chief talent officer there. You started to see those people that rise up in the ranks from talent acquisition, talent development, start to be chief people officers and CHROs for organizations. I think the next side of that are really going to be individuals that really have an understanding of technology and the progression of technology. I also potentially see as HR organizations have data scientists on their teams and that sort of thing, outside of just the HRIS analyst or the compensation analyst that provides data internally. I see some of those tech-oriented roles also sitting within HR organizations, and I can start to see that transition with business leadership as not HR as driving business strategy through HR operations and talent, but through technology, and be seen as a tech partner, not as just a supplemental resource that supports technology within the business.
Just
really
to build on Hala as well, it's kind of a different angle. It's maybe more as a CHRO or a CPO around the table. Like what I've seen, the role evolving is actually helping the other people around the table to look in the same direction, because like often like it's kind of like the CRO set their sales goal, and like there's like some overlap with the COO or the chief product officer, but sometimes like they have an understanding of where we are going that can be slightly different because they are subject matter experts. So what I've seen as a CHRO, it's kind of like how you can bring like the CEO's view and the CRO view and the COO view all together, and like having more really tight alignment at the top, because like if there is not a complete alignment at the top, like there is like huge ripple effect, and no matter what you do as a CHRO to help bridge those gaps, like it's a lot of work if you continue to go down. So I think like it's part of the role at the top of like ensuring there is an alignment throughout the company.
I just kind of echo what Summer was mentioning, as well as the inclusion up front. How I think if we've looked at our function over the years, we have been considered kind of the back office support roles, et cetera. It's not moving as quickly as probably some would like, honestly. But I think what you can see is there has been a lot of progression in terms of, organizations like World at Work, et cetera, kind of really putting, individuals out there. I think it's also tied into the expertise that you bring as well, right? So are you bringing a kind of a very diverse view, kind of as Vanessa had said, is, you can represent this, but also having kind of the business acumen as well to be able to have those discussions to say, okay, when you're designing this from an OD perspective, this is really what you should consider to make this a much more effective process or effective strategy at the end of the day. So again, completely echo what's said there, but I think we are seeing a pretty significant shift over the last 5 to 10 years in terms of HR's role at the table.
Thank you. Now, just notice the time. We've only got like less than 10 minutes left. It's gone very, very quick. It's been a great conversation. And talking about shift technologies, I'm just wanted to get in there. So with the rapid advancements, and we've spoken a little bit about AI, about automation impacting workforce. So just picking that particular area, how should HR leaders think about preparing and guiding business leaders to navigate these changes? So if we're trying to influence the business to deal with those changes of AI automation, what are some thoughts if you're asked to influence that? What would you do there?
I'll jump in just real quick, and then I'll turn to my peers here. Is we have to upskill ourselves first and foremost. So if we're going to be having the conversation with leaders about adoption of a technology, if HR themselves cannot explain and demonstrate the value and the importance of that technology, it's a very difficult conversation to have with business leaders as well. So I hear the terminology, and I completely love it from a lifelong learning perspective, is we've got to upskill ourselves. We need to be able to understand how to use the technology and demonstrate that the technology is valuable and not something to be afraid of or shy away from.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Richard.
I'm
Cool.
I would agree with. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Summer.
No, I was gonna say I would agree with that. I think my teams have tended to be the ones over the years that are going, "Hey, this is nice and bright and shiny, and it's the shiny new penny, as they say, and we really want you to utilize it." But I've always been really careful in making sure that my teams understand we have to your point, know the technology and understand how to best use it for good, but then also what could happen if it's used for bad, right? So that we know how to mitigate that. And I think when you can come to senior leaders with that type of information up front and they can see, I mean, something as small as what it seems small now, but 10 years ago was like just getting senior leaders to post on social media, which is a huge part of our external brand. And they'd be like, "Oh no, I don't do that. I pay people to keep me offline," like the whole, thing. And my team started to show, like, through our own posting and how we were going to market and kind of, showcasing the culture. Then they're like, "Oh, I want to be a part of that. Well, how do I get to be a part of it?" And so you kind of play into that a little bit. And I think that that tends to work really well, especially if they have family members of certain ages that are also talking about this technology at home. That also helps too.
Very true.
I don't have much to add to that. I think it's approaching like AI and automation, like any tool, and look at, okay, what the danger of it. It's a change, even for HR, it's a change that we need to adapt. Like there is like some uncertainty around it. So like playing with it and understanding the tool as much as you would do with like any ATS or performance system, like you play with it, you have a sandbox. So getting familiar and like understanding as much as possible the 360 of it is important, knowing that we keep on learning about it every day.
Thanks, Vanessa. Any more on that one? No. All done. Okay. So I think it's been a great conversation. I think I think what I've learnt about or we've heard about is, like Richard's talked plenty of times about, he's used the word preparation a lot, which I think is so right. So preparation, and then we've spoken about listening, questions, options. I think they're all really important elements to trying to influence. So if we just go around the virtual room one more time, and if you were just going to give your top 3 suggestions to someone, what should they go and what should they incorporate in their day today and every day? What habits do we need to make? So we'll just go one more time around our virtual room. Thank you.
Sure. First, assume positive intent. I think we oftentimes take the emotional play into these conversations, and it's honestly is probably not geared towards us. It's geared towards the situation. So assuming positive intent, and as Rod mentioned, the preparation. I've learned that through my career in terms of the individuals I've supported, about the anticipation and trying to kind of think about, the different views and perspectives. And also just amongst ourselves. I've heard a comment made to me, and I love it, is everybody starts with an A. How you keep the A is up to you. And I think that ties in a little bit to that positive intent, as well as that, again, how you keep the A is up to you. And I think that's relative for all of us in our roles, as well as, we all start with an A. What you do to keep it is up to you at the end of the day.
I'm so glad you said positive intent. I was just thinking about every time that I walk in and I'm like, a moment with myself to make sure that I can go into conversations with that. But I think part of that is also, I think externally having the right community and mentors and coaches around you to allow you to walk into conversations with that positive intent, or to use others as sounding boards, so that you can really, when you have 2 minutes walking to an elevator with business leaders and you have to give them a pitch or an understanding of any idea or outcome you're trying to drive yourself, is that you have those external folks and people that you've built a safe space with that can help you maximize or optimize those opportunities you have with business leaders. And then the other thing that I would say internally is I always tell everyone, seek to understand first, right? And I think that is the preparation that'll help you so much with preparation, right? That positive intent allows you to just sit back and seek to understand first, which also involves an element of good questioning and curiosity to really understand before just coming in with everything that you're ready to share. Then it'll drive a little bit of better delivery and tactfulness in how you're pitching or trying to talk to business leaders or present an idea.
I love all of that. And yeah, I love curiosity. It's so good because that then drives those questions too, doesn't it? And again, from an authentic way when you're really curious. Vanessa?
Yeah, it's hard after what Richard and Hala said. So yes, +1 to asking quite positive intent, seeking to understand. I think I'll double down on authenticity because I think it leads that. So approaching any interaction with this mindset of authenticity being actually your superpower, because it means that also you will ask questions, you will grow from different perspectives. So I'll just leave it at really being confident with yourself first.
That's great. Sorry, I had to change sides of the room because there was too much traffic walking behind me. So again, going last, I feel like I'm just like covering off on all the things that everyone else did. But I will say, when you can be your authentic self, I want to continue to like +1 on that one, because that's going to allow you to really shine and show who you are to leaders and build those relationships that are so important in the moments that matter now, which might be small, so that the moments that really matter down the road when you need support or decision-making to happen, I think it's really important. And then I would say the other piece is really like taking some time each day to really center yourself on what your purpose and goals are, because it can easily get pulled in everyone else's own goals within the organization, right? And so just making sure that you're remaining true to your purpose so that you can help align your teams. I think that's really a key role, and to make sure that you're educating yourself every day so that you're not having to crash course it in the end, right? So if there's something you're curious about, stay curious. That's my biggest thing, is I would double on that too, is like just staying curious. And we might be subject matter experts, but it evolves every day. So we need to stay on top of that.
All right. Well, thank you, Summer, and thanks everybody. What a really wonderful conversation. And I think it's really, again, themed on this being authentic, which really, and I think it comes through being authentic when you're curious and you're asking questions and you're listening. Those things all just come through naturally, I think. And yeah, I really love the tidbits shared by our speakers today. So thank you, everyone. Looking forward to future panels where we'll cross paths, hopefully.
Yeah.
So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rod, for getting up early with us today.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good day.
Ready?
Bye.
Bye.